This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Pieter van Oord, CEO Van Oord, the head of this global marine contractor, a family-owned company with more than 150 years of experience in dredging, offshore wind, and offshore infrastructure. We're here today to talk about the offshore wind endeavors and specifically Van Oord's recent order for a giant, for a giant WTIV. Pieter, to start, I know that Van Oord recently issued its 2021 results, but can you give a brief by the numbers look at the company today using the metrics of your choice?
Good. Well, obviously, 21 was a disappointing year for us on the one hand. As we said in our annual report, it was a year with two phases. On the one hand, we had to report a loss for the first time in a long time in our company, a loss which was created by large provisions, which we had to take on 3 projects, 2 wind projects. One is the Greater Changhua project in Taiwan for Ørsted, and the other one is the Saint-Brieuc project in France for Iberdrola. And I'll explain you a little bit about those 2 projects a little bit later. But we had, I would say, issues on both projects. So we've taken large provisions on those 2 projects. And as a result of that, we had to report a loss. The other side, I would say, of the coin is that we also finalized 2021 with a 4.4 billion euro order book, which is a record order book for our company. And I would say that is probably our first indication, sign that we are working in a different market conditions than we have seen during the last 7 years. So there is on our side quite some, I would say, optimism about this coming decade. And we clearly see that the tipping point in our industry happened somewhere in 21. Clients are aware that, you know, there is going to be a shortage of vessels. There's going to be a shortage of experienced contractors. And so I would say relationships, roles in the industry are changing.
Well, again, I appreciate that recap. Obviously, you serve several sectors of the maritime and the offshore industry. Can you give a brief breakdown of revenue by market sector with specific insights on the cumulative contribution and the future growth that you see in offshore wind as a whole?
Yeah, well, offshore wind was in 20. We did in 20 we did a turnover of 630 million euro, and by that the offshore wind business was for the first time in the history of the company the largest activity in our company, larger than dredging. What we saw was a downturn in a decrease in wind figures to 350 million in 21. But I dare to say that this was an incidental event associated with the operational issues we have on the projects. What we see in 21 was that dredging was more than 700 million, offshore wind 350, offshore traditionally oil and gas 200 million, and our infrastructure business in the Netherlands was about 250 million. If you look at the future, I mean, this decade, for me, it is obvious that our wind business will outpace all other businesses. So we're convinced that within wind, we're going to see double-digit growth figures in the entire industry. The question is who is going to build all these projects? Are there sufficient contractors actually who are prepared to take on all these risks? Those are questions. Well, I really don't know the answer at the moment, but we're predicting an unbalance between supply and demand during this decade.
Again, I appreciate that. Can you give us, how big is your offshore wind order book today? What is the largest project in your pipeline? And if you're able, can you share with me the projects that you're tendering at the moment?
Well, our order book is about 1.5 billion euro, which is a record high order book for offshore wind. And by that, it's actually larger than the order book for our dredging business. The largest project in our order book for offshore wind is the Sofia project for RWE, which is a project which is built in the UK. It's a massive project, 1.4 gigawatts, where we have the balance of plant for the foundations and the cables. So that is the largest project in the order book. If you ask me what projects are you tendering for, I would say at this moment maybe 20. There is more work. Let me just explain another thing. When we are tendering now for projects in offshore wind, we're looking at projects in 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, even sometimes 29. So what we see is long lead times between tenders and actually the actual execution of the project. That is typical, something you see in offshore wind. Usually, I would say you win a project in year 1 and you execute the project in year 3 or year 4. There is long lead time. So the work we're tendering for, most of it now is 25, 26. We have a pretty good order book for 22, 23, 24 already. We're tendering for only a few projects left in 24. And the project, this is just an indication of an interesting trend, and we have announced that we are preferred contractor on 3 large projects in Japan, which is obviously a major step, for European contractors to go to Japan. These 3 contracts have a value for us. They're not in our order book at the moment, but they have a value for us of more than €1 billion. It's really large projects, and those projects will be built 27, 28, 29, 2030. So there is a lead time of 5 years, tendering, negotiations, getting your design ready, do your engineering, do your procurement before you actually are going to install those projects. So our focus is, I would say, with tendering, first of all, North Sea, Europe. That's the number 1, by far the largest market. Number 2, United States. Particularly, we have 1 project in the United States at the moment, which is we're going to do some work on the South Fork project for Ørsted. We're at this moment also tendering, I would say, for at least 5 projects in the United States for 24, 25, 26. And thirdly, we're looking at Japan. Those are our 3 target markets now.
So you referenced it in our first question, but among other projects, you've been involved in the offshore wind Saint-Brieuc project, Offshore France.
Yes.
Can you talk about your role there, your innovative drilling technology that you deployed, as well as challenges faced and lessons learned from this project?
Yeah. Well, I dare to say that probably the Saint-Brieuc project is the most complex foundation contract on an offshore wind park ever in history. We're looking at soil conditions with a soil which is granite, which is harder than concrete. Values of 120, what we call MPa. Technicians will say something. They will know what I mean. What we need to do. This particular project is a jacket project. It's not a monopile. It's jackets. We drill 3 pin piles where we're going to fix the jacket. Those pin piles are drilled in holes, let's say average 25 meters deep. And one of the interesting things about this drilling, obviously, we have an very experienced drilling contractor, subcontractor, the Bauer company from southern Germany. They have a lot of experience with drilling in particularly also the Alps. So you drill in this rock, but one of the challenges when you drill those holes is that the holes do not collapse while you are drilling. So you have to keep the holes open, and you do that by, when you drill, you immediately save the drilling hole with what we call a casing. So you drill and you put the casing in. By that you open, you make certain that the drilling hole is open. When you finalized your drill, you remove your drilling tool. Then you insert a pin pile, which is a permanent pin pile, which will stick out a few meters out of the bottom of the sea, and you have to, grout the pin pile to make it firm. So we do grouting, and then we retrieve the casing. And then when we leave, there is just 3 small pinnacles which stick out of the bottom. And then the next campaign is, with a crane vessel, you place the jacket on top of the 3 on the 3 pins sticking out of the sea bottom. So it's certainly an extremely complex project. We were encountering, I would say, major issues in 21 on the project. First of all, there was quite some opposition of the local fishermen. That has been also in the news. We encountered that the soil was actually even more difficult than what the client had told us. So we had to adjust the drilling tools in order to make it more suitable for this particular rock. So we had to do drill bit conversion. What I can say now is that we have restarted the project since early March, and that so far things are going, knock on wood, so far things are going pretty well.
So in another first, you last year completed the Friesland project, quote unquote, the first time a wind farm of this size has ever been constructed by a lake. I'm sure there's a lot of similarities. I'm sure there's a lot of differences, but can you discuss, is it easier working in a lake as compared to offshore North Sea, and specifically, how is it different?
I would say it's not easier, it's more difficult. And that is, the main reason for that is that the logistics, bringing in those massive turbines and monopiles on a lake is quite a challenge. One. Secondly, the traditional tool to build an offshore wind project on sea is a wind turbine installation vessel. And we're looking here at IJssel Lake with average water depth of, I would say, 15 feet. So the standard jackups were not available. So what you have to do is build up a barge. We call the barge soccer pitch. because it was as big as a soccer field, a modular barge, and we put on the barge a massive crane. And so what you need to do is actually build, I would say, bespoke equipment, particularly for this project. So it requires a lot of engineering. It requires a lot of, I would say, ingenuity, actually, to build a project like that. And I'm glad to say that it's been the second project which we have built on the IJssel Lake in the Netherlands, and it's been a project which we've built extremely successful. We finished it last year, and it's been generating a lot of electricity now for the province of Friesland.
Pieter, again, I appreciate the insight. While Van Oord is certainly not a newcomer when it comes to the installation of offshore wind turbines, you've recently ordered a vessel that will be able to install turbines of up to 25 megawatts, turbines that don't even exist today. Can you provide a rationale behind the decision to order that vessel? And can you share some technical highlights that will make it truly stand out?
Yeah, well, let me just tell you a little bit about the history of our first, or second, I must say, second turbine installation vessel. The first turbine installation vessel which we did build together in 2002. Van Oord has been for 20 years in offshore wind. It was called the Jumping Jack. We have sold it. In 2012, we contracted the vessel Aeolus. It became operational in 2015. At that time, we were building turbines with the size of 4 megawatts. And we felt 4 megawatts was big because when we started in 2002, the average size of the turbines was 2 megawatts. So between 2002 and 2014, the size went up from 2 megawatts to 4 megawatts. When we finalized our first project, which was the Gemini project, we suddenly realized that the average size of turbines had gone up to 8 megawatts. So what we had to do is do a crane conversion, and on this vessel, take off the old crane, and we put on a new Huisman crane, and which made the vessel suitable for 11 megawatts, I would say 10, 11 megawatt turbines. At the moment, we're in the midst of, I would say, building 11 megawatt turbines, but HKN, the Hollandse Kust Noord project, which we are going to build for Shell, we're going to see 14 megawatt turbines. So what we're going to do is actually, this coming winter, we're going to do another crane conversion to the Aeolus. Well, this is a long introduction to the story why we believe that when you build a turbine installation vessel, you should actually keep in mind not the next generation turbine, but the next generation turbine. And we believe that somewhere around 2035, and this is obviously the feedback we have from the people like Siemens Gamesa, Vestas, and GE, that around 2035 we're working with a 20 megawatt turbine. And that, making that decision, we said, we need to be clear, we need to be ready. So we contracted this vessel and we put on a crane with the vision that by 2035 we would be completely ready with this vessel to build this generation which doesn't exist. Even the 20 megawatt turbine doesn't exist. The expectation is that the first models will be around 2028, and that another 7 years later, we will be working on a 25. That's in our modeling, and that's the reason we decided to go for this size vessel. So it's the largest turbine installation vessel in the world. But we really believe if you want to invest for more than 10 years, there is no other choice than to do this.
We also noted that the giant WTIV that you're going to be building is low emission, able to run on methanol. Just in general, can you discuss in overview how the decarbonization trend is driving decisions on the equipment that you build, own, and operate?
Well, starting off with decarbonization, this company has made a pledge commitment that by 2050, in line with the Paris Agreement, we will be carbon neutral. That means that we only have 28 years to go. The key things, obviously, the key emission within our company is the emission from the engines on our vessels. And that means that we have to make two choices. One, we have to choose type of engine suitable for low emission fuels or e-fuels. And two, we have to make a decision with respect to choice of fuel. The jury is out. We don't know whether it's going to be methanol, ammoniac, it could be hydrogen. What we have done so far within this company, we have just finalized a series of 3 dredgers running on LNG, where obviously the footprint of LNG is much better than a marine fuel, marine diesel. And we see LNG in the maritime business as a transition fuel. With respect to offshore wind, we see that our customers actually are extremely motivated to contractors with a low emission solution. So we looked at that, and for that reason we have chosen on both vessels we're building at this moment. We're also building a new cable laying vessel, Calypso, which we have contracted with VART. We have and the Boreas, which we have contracted with Yantai Raffles. Both vessels have engine types suitable for e-fuels. So you make an extra effort, an extra investment, actually, to make that those vessels able to run on those e-fuels. With respect to the Boreas, we have also made the decision that we're going to make her suitable for methanol. That means that you have to, so it's going to be dual fuel. Obviously, green methanol is at this moment only limited available, but we expect that during now, and I would say 2030, that a large infrastructure of green methanol will be built. So we also have fuel tanks for green methanol built in the vessel. With respect to the Calypso, we have the engines suitable for e-fuels, and we have said we wait with the decision on what type of fuel we're going to use. I've not mentioned one other fuel, which is biofuels. On our present dredgers, which have traditional engines, we carry out more and more projects with biofuels. We have a number of people around here in Northwest Europe now who produce biofuels. Neste from Finland, you might know the people. They're a big player in biofuels. And Shell Oil has just made an announcement that they're going to build here in Rotterdam at the largest refinery, also a large biofuel factory. So I see the future of our I would say fuel technology. On the one hand, phasing out marine diesel with the existing engines with biofuels, and on the other hand, new vessels making suitable for the e-fuels. That's whether it be ammoniac or methanol, I don't know, but I think that will be our future. And obviously you have to make a major investment for that.
If you have just a few moments, the Van Oord name is obviously long tenured in maritime and the offshore energy spaces. With digitalization, decarbonization, and autonomy, this truly is a transcendent period in maritime history. When you look ahead to the coming generation, what do you see as the greatest challenge for maritime companies of your shape and size to survive, to prosper? And I know you just discussed with the fuels, but how are you investing today to ensure your tomorrow?
I think what we're looking at is what you could say is we're living in a time of transition, and it's obviously you only survive when you adapt. And there is a lot of, I would say, uncertainty in the market, how and what direction we're going, but it's clear that driven by the Paris Agreement, we have to move to carbon neutrality, and that's going to change the entire industry. And I think what it means is that we have to phase out old vessels, we have to build new vessels. So I would say, if you say what is the largest challenge, I would say you could say it's a cultural challenge, that the mindset of your people need to change. We cannot continue the way we did in the past. We need to build new vessels, which is quite a challenge, because we all know, as a maritime reporter, new build prices have gone up considerable recently. Shipyards have suffered, so you need to find proper shipyards to build your new vessels. And I expect the next decades a massive wave of investments in all sorts of new vessels, whether it be container vessels, bulkers, tankers, dredgers, wind turbine installation vessels, which actually are all suitable for this carbon neutral area.
Okay, so Pieter, I truly appreciate your time. I look forward to following the Van Oord story for another 30 years.
Well, we're moving to the United States. Follow the news. In the near future, we're going to do more announcements about the United States. And obviously, we're also looking forward working in the United States.